People might not know what triggers are. So slides are content. We looked at that, weather, funding days. Tell us, what triggers are in your words and like why they're important.
So triggers are basically what is going to trigger off an audio and visual reward essentially for that rep. So once that action takes place, once that metric is incremented, it'll automatically change the slide. It'll put in the next slide as being a little bomb, which is nice for them to see coming up. And then it'll play whatever their anthem is that they picked. So it'll play a YouTube clip of whatever they selected. And some of the guys have gone as far as uploading their own YouTube clips just to have as an anthem.
Yeah.
But in those cases, I mean, you can see here the difference between the AE summary and the RDE summary is that there's obviously double the amount of triggers for an RDE. And why that is because, as we talked about before, AEs, they have triggers for whenever something is funded. So when that deal is closed. But an RDE actually has two. And RDEs, their funding essentially is the package alley-oop when they pass that deal over. But they also do like to see when a deal funds that they were the RDE for. Just they saw how that deal went over, and we want to congratulate them for that as well. So we have those RDE funding metrics are actually, and there's a separate metric that aren't looking at the opportunity owner, but instead the RDE field, which was populated when the deal was pushed over from RDE to AE.
That's cool. Do you mind click one of your TVs? There's a little Easter egg hiding here. We can show folks that are watching this like what that looks like. It'll show one of our custom ones. So any TV you want to pick, we can just show one. So basically, you say, hey, we care about how many phone calls you make. When you make 50, we want to celebrate that. Or when you fund a deal, we want to celebrate that. So you can double click that clock there. It'll issue that bomb and you can click it. It'll probably be our custom demo user, Susan. So here's an example of a trigger. It may play audio on your side. I don't know if it'll play for everybody, but there's that YouTube video. So it's pretty awesome that your reps are making their own YouTube videos and uploading them as their triggers. We've got a lot of cool stories of people doing funny things like that, as well as like theming days, like Big Hit Mondays or like Disco Tuesdays. So people have a lot of fun with triggers, but wanted to make sure people knew exactly what you meant by that. So thanks for showing that.
No problem. And then one of the things that we had done with these triggers, we actually had it set up this way. I'm not sure how many other people have it set up. It's a little weird just because the way that's named is in a different sort. But we wanted to not only capture when a deal, in this case, a deal was moved from one rep to another, but how many they did this week. So that's how these triggers are all set up, is to actually see how many packages were sent over. So the first time this metric gets incremented, it'll actually say, all right, well, if this is the first time, it's going to say this is the first package alley-oop they had this week. But the next one that they do, it's going to say, hey, this is the second. So we know that if it goes off and everyone's looking at the screen, we don't have to ask how many deals that they actually did this week. We know.
Oh, that's cool. I don't think anybody's ever done it that way. So basically you're saying, is it greater than or equal to 2 or less than or equal to 2? Or what are you doing there? Greater than 1? I got you.
It's greater, yeah. So it's greater than 1, and just because the way the triggers work, that it works that way. And then when you go into the third, let me pull up the third. I think this should be greater than 2. So if it's greater than 2, it's going to show the third. And it's basically, once it gets triggered for that week, just because it's the time frame in the week, it's not going to get triggered again for that user. So you don't have to do greater or equal to, it won't trigger again. Even though the fourth, let's say they do 4 deals and they do another deal, which is going to be the 5th deal, it's not going to trigger the first, second, third, and fourth because they've already been triggered for that week. Because they've been triggered, it's not going to re-trigger. So because of that logic, it allows us to just use this simple logic setup so that we can just have it, go off and then show, how many they're up to for that week.
That's pretty cool. And I like the way your brain works. I'll show you something though. We'll learn something here. Keep going down. You should be able to do metric type equals, I think it's a count. So record, and you can say like, so you can actually build in a custom, like you can actually make a new metric here. So you could say this, like whatever it is, app funded. You can build a metric here unique to this trigger. So have you ever done that by chance? This is something
I have
else.
not.
You,
No, this is
say,
new to me.
you could say equals 4 equals 5. So what you're doing absolutely works, but you could actually build in, kind of like we looked at metrics earlier with all your custom logic. You can make a record based one, or you could say if a deal was greater than 100,000 in funding. So you can be pretty explicit on some triggers too. So poke around with that. You might find that you might create some new triggers that you didn't have before.
Yeah. And one of the next features that I saw that you had added recently, or pretty recently, was the ability to have one trigger on multiple TVs. So in our cases where we had, for each type of trigger, we had to make 12. Mm-hmm. Now we don't have to make 12, 14 times. We can just make it once and then assign out those particular triggers to more than one TV.
Yeah.
In our case, like I had said, that because of the way that we have our TV set up in the different locales that we have, in some cases we want to have that same screen show, but we don't want to have the triggers because we don't want to have the noise going off.